Okay, that looks like we have most people on, so we'll go ahead and get started. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name's Kate Hubbard. I'm the Director of Marketing at Aerostream, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We're very excited to walk you through 3 tried and true best practices that are helping restaurant chain operators run a more efficient supply chain, both during times of disruption as well as in more stable environments. And we'll also be showing you how to put these best practices into use with technology to experience optimal results that meet your organization's key performance metrics. And so that you have an idea of how today's program will flow, here's a look at our agenda. After we do some brief introductions, we'll hop into our 3 best practices for today, and then we'll have time at the end for questions. And speaking of questions, there is a Q&A box in your GoToWebinar panel where you can freely submit your questions throughout the webinar for our presenters. I will ask them on your behalf at the end, and then any that we don't get to, we will make sure to follow up directly after the webinar. So I do want to get right into it. We have a great turnout today, a lot of new names. So definitely for our first-time attendees who may not be familiar with Aerostream, I wanted to start with a quick introduction about who we are. So Aerostream is a food service supply chain technology company headquartered in Chicago. Our platform is cloud-based and primarily used by supply chain teams of corporate restaurant chains to optimize their margins and control food costs, connect and collaborate with trading partners, streamline supply chain visibility and operations, gain clear visibility into inventory and spend, and lastly, protect their brand by monitoring food quality issues. And on the next slide, you can see a snapshot of some of our restaurant chain operator customers that range from smaller chains like Slim Chickens to larger chains like Popeyes or Arby's. But we don't just work with operators. We are proud to have the largest network of supply chain partners that includes operators, distributors, and suppliers, all as part of our platform, all using a data-driven approach to achieve their goals. And so on the next slide, you can see a quick look at our network. We have over 200 restaurant chain operators, over 1,000 distribution center locations, and over 7,500 suppliers in our network, as well as over $45 billion in annual food spend running through our system. So I hope that gives our new folks a good overview of Aerostream's expertise, as well as a refresher for some of our returning friends. So let's go ahead and begin. Leading us through our discussion today is Mark Larson and Michael Artman. Again, any questions you may have for them can be submitted through the Q&A box, and then we will have some time at the end to address those. So first up, I'd like to introduce Mark Larson, Aerostream's Operator Partnership Director. He has significantly contributed to Aerostream's standing as the leading food service supply chain solution, helping to grow the business and increase capabilities over the last 10 years. And prior to joining Aerostream, Mark led and supported the supply chain analytics team at Cisco for over 5 years. And we also have Michael Artman, Aerostream's Senior Solutions Consultant, with us today. He has been with the company for over a decade, using his expertise to drive sales initiatives across Aerostream's various software and service solutions. Mike brings with him his best practices in supply chain strategy and planning, with over 15 years experience in roles such as operations management, process optimization, account management, as well as sales. So thank you to both Mark and Mike for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mark to begin our best practices discussion.
Great. Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. So first best practice we're going to touch on, and each of these best practices we're going to explore further within the system. Mike's going to do that for us. But number one, we have to be more efficient. Obviously, a very tough time for many organizations operationally. We've seen furloughs and layoffs, dispersed teams and remote working, and really overall greater supply chain volatility, which is creating more work for the teams, right? Having to go out and find secondary suppliers, frequent demand shifts by market, really more firefighting on a day-to-day basis. So ultimately right now, teams are being asked to do more with less. And how do you do that, right? And ultimately you have to be more efficient. And it starts by looking at daily activities and processes. Are you, often waiting for someone internally or externally, like an account manager or distributor, to provide you with some data, or maybe you're pulling data from various sources? These activities can slow you down. And then once you have the data, right, then there's often a lot of scrubbing or data manipulation that you have to do to get to your answer. So, from our perspective, to be more efficient, you need to have clean, timely data in a centralized, easily accessible location. So now that we have good data available immediately, we can really focus on opportunity identification, which also isn't always easy. Grinding through, rows and rows on a spreadsheet, looking for answers and looking for those opportunities and those risks, that's not always efficient. So our platform really enables an exception-based management approach. Mike's going to show you more on how our system really directs you to where you need to focus your attention. So, where am I being overcharged by my distributors? Do I have any potential inventory risks? Are there substitutions or rogue purchasing taking place within the system? Are there new contracting opportunities or SKU rationalization opportunities that I should be focusing my attention on? So, we've seen this across our customer base, whether you've got 30 units or 3,000 units, and really across all segments. You need to have good data and the right solutions to be efficient. So that's best practice number one: reevaluate your team's efficiency. Think about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis to be more efficient. Best practice number two: really focusing on that contracted pricing and keeping that buttoned up. So, for many or most operators right now, sales are down, unfortunately. And when sales are down, really there's greater scrutiny being placed on cost. So for operators, it's really critical that money isn't slipping through the cracks. But the reality is it does. And it's typically not intentional. There's just a lot of moving parts and complexity. And just as, right now, most operators are being asked to do more with less, the distributors are dealing with the same thing. They've got their own resource challenges. And then on top of that, we're also seeing operators contracting with more manufacturers to mitigate supply risk. And we're also seeing more substitutions on contracted goods. So you take all these things: manual processes, reduced resources, greater complexity, substitutions. Ultimately, this combination is resulting in greater risk of pricing errors. So, for our customers, they want to reduce errors. And if there are errors, they want to make sure they're catching them as early as possible so that a $5,000 problem doesn't become a $50,000 problem. And really, they're able to do that through better processes, tools, and visibility. Mike's going to share you more in this specific area here very soon. So, what we've seen over the years is typical savings impact to be in the range of 0.25% to 2% of contracted spend. So, if we take just 0.5% on, let's say, 20 million in food spend, which isn't a huge amount, that's $100,000 a year in annual savings or risk that you have out there. So obviously there's a lot at stake. We need to keep it buttoned up. Purchasing teams, they're working hard on getting these agreements in place with the manufacturers. And so we really need to make sure that they're executed properly and that nothing's falling through the cracks. So the second best practice there, verifying that contracted pricing, making sure you're getting ahead of those issues. Third best practice, which I think has been, we've seen just a heightened emphasis on this, especially over the last 4 to 6 months, is around inventory disruptions. Obviously, nobody wants inventory disruptions, right? This creates pain and extra work for all three parties: operator, distributor, and manufacturer here. So I would say the key here is not necessarily how we manage inventory disruptions, but how do we identify and prevent potential inventory disruptions before they occur? So in order to do this effectively, you really need to understand not only your inventory levels at your distributor, but also how does demand tie into that? And what are those inbound purchase orders to your distributors' warehouses, those that are on the way, those that are scheduled? So once we have all three of those components on hand, on order, and the demand, now we can actually take that information, combine it together, and be much more proactive in identifying those potential issues. So, one example of this, Raising Cane's. They're a really great customer of ours, very forward thinking, and I'd say very good at leveraging Airstream solutions in combination with collaborative practices with their distributors and their manufacturers. So here we've just got a little snippet, an example from a business case that we've got on our website featuring Raising Cane's and specifically how they're using the system and collaborative practices to get ahead of inventory disruption. So I'd encourage you all to go check it out after this call, and maybe you can gain some insights there that may help you in your inventory management practices. So, lastly here, in regards to inventory disruptions, and Mike's going to share with you here very soon our inventory alerts tile, which is our most heavily used tile. We track how all of our customers are using the system, and that goes to show you how important inventory management is across our customer base. So as you can see here, a few inventory considerations in regards to what's at stake. And we think about stockouts, right? There's that customer experience and the potential risk or the impact to the brand if something's not there on the menu that they were expecting or hoping to get. So not only is there a potential for lost revenue at that one point in time, but also lost future sales potentially. But then from a supply chain team perspective, scrambling to avoid stockouts or correct stockout situations, it's a huge time sink and a real pain. So you take that, and you also take expedited transportation costs. Just the whole idea of stockouts, there's a huge cost and risk associated with that. Now, on the other side of things, we also got to think about surpluses as well. So, if you have promotional items or you're transitioning, certain items within your restaurant, you're phasing out one item, rolling in a new one, or if you have perishable goods, being very proactive to make sure that surpluses aren't in place is, I would say, almost equally as important, because there's a huge financial risk at stake if you're not getting ahead of that and having, to write off a pallet or two of goods that, is no longer sellable at your restaurant. So, that's all I really had on the inventory disruptions piece and the best practices. Mike's going to dig into these a little bit further to show you how, our great customer base are doing these three things, and appreciate everyone's time here today.
Great. Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Kate, for that information. Thank you, attendees on the webinar, for joining us today. As Kate mentioned, there is a questionnaire box down on your panel. Feel free to submit some information. I'm going to spend here a little time showing you our platform in the context of those three best practices that we've seen. We won't cover everything that Airstream offers today, but certainly if you have questions at the end, we'd be happy to address those. So let's start off with our first, which is to reevaluate your team's efficiency. Every restaurant operator that we've worked with, data is just critical in everything that they make from a decision standpoint each day, whether you're in purchasing, you're in supply chain, you're in a quality management role. You need data to make decisions. And quite frankly, it's getting a little bit more difficult to get access to that data. As Mark mentioned, distributors sometimes are shorthanded. They've got a lot going on. We in the restaurant community as well, and so do our suppliers. And getting access to this data is the first challenge. But then once you have that data, there's always some spreadsheet work or data cleansing process that nearly everyone has to go through to get to that final answer. And so it's important to make sure that from our perspective, we're able now to present data in an actionable way to our customers. So this is why our customers come to us from a supply chain platform perspective. What you're looking at here, we call our tiles. What we've taken now is we have distributor data feeds that we receive on a nightly basis. That'll include all of the distributor invoices and quantities and financial information and all of the product details that we package up. Now, it's important to note that we categorize 100% of our customers' spend to allow them to have easy access across their different categories to look for opportunities, We're going to look for just general spend analytics, sourcing actions, contracted price verifications, and a number of different things I'll show you today. Number two is we also collect inventory positions of your key products. Our customers are always worried about cups and certain proprietary items they manage, and I want to know how much is on hand, how much is coming in from my supplier, do I have enough product out there? All those questions that we have as a restaurant operator, we need very quick answers to that. So that's what the tiles are serving that purpose for. Each one of these tiles gives me an axis of the health of my supply chain, and ultimately, what do I need to take action on here? These top three right here are going to be good examples of an action tile. What quality issues am I having at the restaurant? Things that are being delivered that are out of spec. What contract pricing here in the middle is about to expire? And do I have any ones that are pending approval? We'll actually explore this one today. What inventory issues am I seeing across my network? Am I out of stock? More importantly, am I going to be out of stock and proactively get in front of those types of issues? And that's what we do as a technology company. Collect data, package it up, categorize it, and make it usable for our customers to very quickly take action on. There are also a number of tiles you see here in blue, very analytically driven, giving you a lot of data aggregated up so that way you can see very clear line of sight of top line spend, overcharges, preemptive charges that may be occurring to get in front of them. So we're going to spend a little time looking at this information today. Now, one thing to note, all of our customers have a tremendous access of a lot of data. Everything across their product masters, their suppliers, everything from a distributor product movement and all the activity that's going along here, all of our contracted data, both from a supplier and distributor markup standpoint. So it all resides within this platform. So whatever my role is within the supply chain or purchasing or quality team, I now have all one single source of truth for all of my supply chain data needs. Now let's take a look at one of these tiles. I want to start here with our top spend. This was actually the beginning process of when we developed this a few years ago. Now, at its surface, you can see here very quickly my top categories that I'm purchasing from. As I had mentioned, when we receive data from distributors on behalf of our customers, we're categorizing that spend and putting all the components together, regardless of what the distributor information has. It makes it very easy for me within a couple clicks to get down to my categories, see what my average price, how things are changing, look across the whole entire group, very quickly export that information, and then I can navigate very quickly out. And again, that's because of all the data services we provide behind the scenes. Now that's at its top layer, and we're going to go look at a couple other tiles, but I want to show you something a little bit more. That's what we call our dashboards. You know, tiles give our customers very quick access to what's priority for today, but then we always need to get into the details. And so you'll see this icon across a number of our different tiles, and there are dashboards. And it's our ability to have different dashboards within inventory, within quality, within audit, and within top spend. Each of these dashboards are purpose-built, integrated into our platform. Now, we've optimized the experience of our customers so they don't have to collect the data, they don't have to clean and format the data, and they don't have to go through a prompting series to figure out what information do I need accessible for analytics and reporting. So upon entry of any one of those dashboards from the tile, you're going to see a screen just like this. This one's my spend dashboard. I can see over here in left all of the various attributes around all the products that I buy. I can see that by different categories. I can pull out vendor. And as I keep moving down, you'll see there's a number of different attributes that allow our customers to report all of their volume and spend across different time. Now, what is important to note too is one of the neat things about being part of a technology company is working directly with our customers to develop and enhance our platform. And these orange rows you see here, these are all the metrics that our customers use on a daily basis to get very quick answers about their spend and volume. And then, of course, other dashboards as well. Now, this is just a starting place. What we allow our customers to do is build off different views and save off different views that runs in a scheduled process. So when we clean up tomorrow the next set of data, all of their dashboards are able to come in there, have all this information ready to go, look across their various different categories to know if there's some spend opportunities, why tomatoes might be going cost up in one supplier, down in the other, looking across to my different regions, franchisee groups or stores, obviously to see all the different spend. I share these as examples of the types of things our customers use with this applicable data. Now that's how our system is architected. So before we transition forward, it's a transition from spreadsheets, reports, waiting for a distributor to give you data. Fresh thing in the morning, you see all of your tiles and all the things that we need to take care of first thing in the morning and start to then work through those tasks very quickly. But all the data now resides out there, drastically increasing the efficiencies of our restaurant corporate teams. So now let's look at best practices number 2, which is verifying contracted pricing to proactively identify issues. Now, most of our customers before our platform have a similar Excel process. They download invoices, they try to get their pricing into some electronic form to go see where they're being overcharged. Fortunately, some folks aren't even able to do that because of the limited time we have right now with all the other activities to go for. And there's a big risk of being overcharged for a lot of your products. Now, we have established really a different price management process for our customers that really is more collaborative with the suppliers and distributor community. That ultimately, from a path, allows the supplier to enter in new pricing, approve that at the corporate team, electronically communicate that to the distributor, and then actually a 2-price verification process so that way you guys don't get overcharged. And I want to take you through that. So whatever your process is today, this is how the transition starts to look. And I want to start here in that middle tile, our contract management. You'll see here, again, it's another one of those step actions. When are my pricing terms going to expire? As I load in here, I might have different category managers or buyers representing those different products. I can very quickly see how much I've spent in the last year as I'm starting to prepare that time with that supplier. Now, for the sake of today's webinar, I'm not going to go through a deep dive of our contract management application. I will call out it is a food service specific platform. We continue to develop enhancements to this. But more importantly, better and more efficient ways of collecting and communicating pricing. So we can always spend at a different time the deep dive components of that. But it does model out by your products for each of your suppliers what your guaranteed price would be at the restaurant location, including all of the supplier, all of the freight, and all of the distributor markup components that you would see. So that way you have it modeled out, can run it in analytics, and ultimately what I'm going to demonstrate today is really a better price management and invoice verification process. So contracts reside here. What's nice about that now is let's talk about how the updates are going to occur. Now, in that middle tile, you see where the contracts say number 4, and it says these are pending my approval. Once we get the system up and running, for our customers, we now start to activate suppliers for future pricing updates. Now, we actually receive over 5,000 pricing updates on a monthly basis that are being communicated from the suppliers and approved by the distributors, and approved by you folks on the restaurant group of what those changes would be. So as I select on that, I can see here that my supplier has a number of different items that I purchased from them. They have come into the system upon entry and given me a new landed cost to the distribution center. Hey, great, the price has gone down. It stayed the same. That one too as well. Or sometimes that could be going up. It gives me the opportunity to review all the information submitted by my supplier that might be coming typically through email in various different formats. Now there's a singular process. I can go and either accept or reject that updated pricing, and it folds back into my contract management application. Now, just sort of a note about what we've experienced over the last couple of years. You know, there there was a change that needed to occur. Suppliers really had their own formats, right? I have a different form I use, a spreadsheet these folks request, an email process here. And our goal was to bring the supplier community onto one platform, working with our operators. And that took some time to build up that singular process. So that way it made it easy for suppliers to come in and do. It made it easy for our restaurant chains to then receive that pricing updates and then communicate it forward. And so we're very excited over the success we've seen over the last year and a half of building that out and getting the suppliers on board. And it's really changed, I think, our industry into more of a collaborative nature than, finding and receiving emails and trying to chase those details around. Now, that's really just the maintenance side, if you will, the frequency of pricing updates. What's nice, our system electronically batches those pricing updates and send them to food service distributors. So across our customer base, their trading partners are already expecting and familiar with the process that you see here today. What I want to show you now here are our two tiles from an audit perspective. So we like to think about it as catch mistakes before they're going to occur. And our preemptive audit tile gives us an opportunity to do just that. If I'm expecting on the first of the month my price to change, I want to know if my distributor is going to have that new price in effect on time. And so we're actually able to check the math before an invoice is cut. And so I can see by a distribution center where I have potential variances between our system and then the distributors. Hey, my chicken fillets here look like there's going to be a $4.87 charge. We need to go and make sure that that gets corrected. And so there's a cleanup effort that goes on so that our customers make sure, hey, not one invoice goes out the door where my restaurant location is going to be upset about that. But we do like to deploy a trust but verify method. We still want to check to see if any invoices still slip through the cracks. So lastly here, I can look across again by distribution center, but this time it's looking at the sell price and saying, hey, you definitely were charged over. Let's make sure that that $3.78 discrepancy, gets course corrected. And we leverage a lot of those dashboards too, to pre-aggregate actionable data. So I click on that, I can see a list of all of the invoices and overcharges by restaurant location. So that way it's very easy for us now as a corporate group to make sure all of the credits got issued back to our group. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today is staying ahead of inventory disruptions. Now, Mark had mentioned this a little earlier. This is typically the first thing our customers' teams are looking at when they walk in the door. Do I have any out of stock? And do I have any at risk of being out of stock products? And that's really the key there for us. You can see this here. I've got a couple items we probably have already been working on. It's not a big deal. I know when my inventory files have come in and how fresh that data is. And the way our customers approach that is depending on the person in the organization, I can go and tag and group items. I might be a category buyer in charge of these items, and I want to make sure that they're in stock. I might be running a promotion, and I want a program manager, and it's important to me to make sure that those items are in stock as well. Some supply chain teams are focused on depletion of old items. Nobody likes to get stuck with an invoice for obsolete product because, hey, we just lost track of sight of that. So there's a lot of applications within this tile, but it's to give our customers a quick safety net of how to identify but get in front of issues. So let's go take a look here at my promotion. I can see here everything gets color coded. It helps very easily for me to go and focus what's at risk. If I have an opportunity like Raising Cane's described earlier to get on the phone with my account team and say, hey, we think there might be a potential inventory issue coming up on Thursday for this product. Are you aware of that? How can we talk about that and make sure that it's not going to be an actual issue? So here, I'll give you one example. My Illinois distributor has got some honey sauce for a promotion that we run. They currently have 11 cases on hand. We know when the next purchase order is coming in here, I'm burning through about 15 of those a week. And so unfortunately, I'm going to be out of stock here on the 8th unless that purchase order is going to be coming in there. So is this information need to be updated? Are there transfers of product? What's the resolve to make sure that we're not out of stock? Now, like you've seen before in other tiles, this is our dashboard, and this one's built with a purpose for inventory visibility. It loads the same like you had seen before with a number of different attributes and metrics on the side. Now, again, we like to apply groupings here. So if I was just looking at my promotional items, I can just see what those details are. As we look across there, some customers start to now think, well, how can I better manage my inventory? Who's buying these products? How much product is sitting out there? So I can have better oversight of things like a promotional event. So you can see out here, we also start to tie different parts of our system back into dashboards and other analytics. So for example, we just looked at contracts a minute ago. And if I know my contracted value, I can tie that into the inventory positions and know how much product is sitting out in my supply chain. So with recent events where we may be concerned about having too much supply out in the supply chain at different times of the year, we may want to have a little more oversight into the cost and impact of those types of things. So that covers our 3 best practices today. But I did want to very quickly highlight a couple other components before we open it up for Q&A. We won't go into these in detail, but to our customers, those 3 areas is where they would start in starting with our program. But beyond that, we now can start to look at other opportunities, like customers are saying, hey, if I have a crushed case or some wilted lettuce at my restaurant, how do I capture that issue, ultimately drive that through a workflow, and get a credit back to my location as well? That's all built on the same platform, so within 60 seconds, the restaurant store can capture those details and everything gets funneled through. We also have spend management tools beyond that to look, hey, across those categories that AeroStream is doing with their technology services behind the scenes, are there contracting opportunities I can go after? We built a sourcing platform that allows you to take those things to, and it also have a supplier discovery with over 6,000 suppliers, allowing you to get access to, for backup suppliers, different category options and different consolidations. And lastly, we also have a data analytics department that looks across various different categories in the markets to understand where price changes are going to be for the future, giving commentary to our customers about what to expect to see. All of those things are built and adapted here on our platform. But I appreciate everybody's time today in showing you at least a portion of our platform. And now we'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mark. So, excuse me. Yes, as Mike said, if you do have a question, please go ahead and enter it in now. We did have a few that came in, so I'm going to go ahead and get those started. This first one is kind of a 2-part question. One of our participants is asking, how can I prioritize the information that needs to be communicated to my organization and C-suite? How can I be proactively updating versus reactively scrambling to communicate the status of the supply chain day to day? I'm not sure, maybe Mark, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, sure. So, I think first of all, it depends on your needs, right? It depends on your organization, what specific metrics and KPIs you're looking to really kind of keep a pulse on. And so there's a couple different approaches that we typically see. One would be granting, access to tiles across the organization. It's not just limited to, the system's not just limited to the supply chain team, but if you want your COO or your CFO to have access to a lot of this information, or somebody in your finance or marketing team, they can have access as well. And you can turn, Mike showed you all those tiles. You can just turn on and off the tiles that are specifically relevant for that person. So that's one path. I think another path that's, probably a little more popular is custom dashboards. So Mike showed with you, there's a lot of capabilities within MicroStrategy. So I think one of the best practices we see across our customer base is, you first identify what are the key metrics, the key things that I want to report on and share throughout the organization. From there, you can go and design a custom dashboard. We have a team, our customer success team is there to support you, help you design that if you need help in doing that. That's a big, feature, I think, of our services is that support that we have. We really view ourselves as an extension of your organization. And then that way you have the specific view that you want to communicate on a regular basis. So when that data comes in, that fresh data comes in on a nightly basis, you have a fresh report or dashboard that you can circulate out or set up a subscription for. And so everybody gets the most relevant information needed. So a lot of different paths that you can take, but good news is that our account management team has been doing this for a long time and is able to share best practices and metrics that are commonly used across customers. So a lot of different options, but I think that good news is that there's a lot of flexibility there.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. We have another one that's come in. What changes in food service supply chain do you expect post-pandemic?
Hey, I can take that. This is Mike. Sure. I think I'll first call out just, sort of a little bit of the theme we've been talking about today is doing more with less, across the restaurant customers that we have, but also in the supplier and distributor community. And so actionable data has been just really critical for our customers lately. I think what's going to keep occurring is there used to be a lot more predictability for the year. We could forecast how much product we might need and what sales might look at. But now that has shrunk to literally 4 weeks. And our ability to now respond to what we think is going to happen over the next 4 or 5 weeks is going to require different data sets, different applications to that data, and different approaches to that. And so when we are, as an industry, struggling to have access to that data, we're shorthanded to go and get that information, we need better ways to go and take action upon that. So I think that's just going to be something we're going to see for the next year is short-term changes, reacting to what's going on out there, and pivoting as much as we need. And good thing too, as Mark mentioned, we have a account management team that has been doing this for a while. What's nice is sharing best practices like you've seen today is part of what we provide as think of some of our expertise to help guide folks through that, in addition to the data and platform that we provide.
Thank you, Mike. And it looks like we have one last question. What is the best way for operators, manufacturers, and distributors to work together during market disruptions?
Okay, yeah, I'll take that. That's a tough one, right? I think that, you often hear about collaborative planning and things like that as best practices. So I think ultimately it comes down to, when you think about the three parties and how they work together, it comes down to, collaboration and transparency. I think those are really the two key elements. And so, we talked a little bit earlier about, Raising Cane's and referenced them and how they're, doing some really good things in terms of their collaborative practices. And, for example, they have their processes in terms of regular calls and meetings with certain partners. They're actually taking reports out of our system and dashboards out of our system and pushing them directly to the distributors. So, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because the distributors have all the same data, but it's not, their systems aren't built to bubble up those risks or opportunities, right? So, things like that, just, sharing of information and improving upon processes. Mike talked a little bit about the pricing portal, right? The supplier pricing portal, having, instead of the supplier emailing something to somebody at the operator to then have to go and recommunicate that again to somebody else. Let's have the supplier go directly into the system and update that. Obviously, the less touches reduces the probability of error. And so really across our platform, that's really been a very common theme, I think, over the last few years, and as we look ahead on our roadmap, is how do we make this platform more collaborative? And we're doing that with things like our RFP solution and quality incident management. And we really see a lot more opportunities in this kind of collaborative transparency type space. And, we're continuing to expand, in those areas. So that, ultimately our goal is to help everybody be more efficient and really reduce the friction and things that are slowing all the different teams down. And collaboration and transparency, I think that's where the focus is.
Great. So, well, thank you to our audience for those questions. We appreciate those. If any other questions do pop up, please feel free. You can still go ahead and enter them in, and we can just directly reach out to you after. But before we wrap up, I do want to mention we will be sending out the recording of this webinar for you to watch again or share with your colleagues. And in addition to the recording, we're also providing a complete best practices guide that covers not only the three that we went over today, but also gives you 3 more for you to consider. And some of those Mike had touched on at the end there. And so they include ensuring purchasing compliance to achieve cost and quality control, running sourcing events to create new savings and partnership opportunities, and creating a strong food quality and safety program to quickly resolve incidents. And like you saw today, the guide will include the impacts on various key performance metrics for each best practice to be used as a reference point. So lastly, if you are interested in staying up to date with AeroStream, you can subscribe to our emails on our website under the resources section, as well as follow us on social media, specifically LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. So that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you again to Mark and Mike for being here today, and a special thank you to everyone who dialed in for the presentation. We always look forward to having you on our next webinar. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.